Hi, I'm Dr. Diane Hayden, publisher of Essential Naples magazine. Welcome to our weekly podcast where I interview our expert writers and contributors for Essential Naples on topics ranging from natural medicine, green living, spirituality, and living a more holistic lifestyle. I'm happy today to have Denise Pancyrz with me today. She is a national diabetes reversal and holistic lifestyle coach, speaker, and the best-selling author of The Virgin Diabetic: Reverse the Effects of Type 2 Diabetes, Reduce Medication, and Improve Your Glucose Levels, which is available on Amazon. Diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, Denise was prescribed 4 daily insulin shots along with oral medication for diabetes and heart disease. This protocol helped to bring her glucose levels down. However, she did not feel as healthy and vibrant as expected. After changing her protocol by learning to rest and preserve her pancreas, she was able to eliminate all medication and insulin and regain her energy. So I am excited to have Denise with me here today. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. We're gonna, bust open some of these myths on diabetes medication for sure. You have an amazing story. So let's just start there. Tell us a little bit about, what was going on with you and how you were diagnosed and how you got to where you are right now with all your knowledge and everything.
Well, I will tell you, this is not something I ever do. So life kind of takes you on a little bit of a journey sometimes, which is good. It's
Yeah.
good. Uh, I was one of the folks, I never had a weight problem, so diabetes was not something I necessarily expected, although I did have some family members that fit into the obese category that were type 2 diabetic. But I did know eventually in my 40s, my glucose levels were starting to increase. And when I say increase, I mean they were hitting over 200. And if you thought that should have been a wake up call, it wasn't. I was too busy. I wasn't your typical case of being overweight. I was overworked, overstressed, and I really didn't have time, at least I thought, to take care of myself. And then one day I thought, maybe I should start taking care of myself. So I really started to watch, get back on a better, more nutritious diet and get back to exercising. I let that go for several years. And before I knew it, it was too little, too late. I ended up in the ER with pancreatitis and pneumonia, and I had a glucose of 410, and my A1C was 10%. So for those that aren't familiar what that really means, it means that my average daily glucose was about 240, almost 2.5 times what it should be.
Wow.
So I obviously was a mess and spent nearly a week in the hospital. Uh, I learned from that experience that, oh my gosh, if I could ever tell someone not to go through all of this, I absolutely would. And, I quickly learned that when they give you insulin as a type 2 diabetic, we don't really have the best education on how to do that and the pitfalls and what to look for. So it's like a huge roller coaster ride. They didn't tell me I would be hypoglycemic because I took it seriously. And I think the perspective was if you're that ill with diabetes, you'll see those highs, the hyperglycemia, but not the lows, the hypoglycemia. And I think that was really a lost opportunity for me as a patient and from what I'm seeing from other folks that are patients as well. So I decided I didn't want to see my glucose just dramatically drop 100 points and become hypoglycemic.
Yeah,
I
because you
really
don't
wanted,
you don't feel good either. I can imagine like
no,
your
no,
moods and everything else and just the way that you feel is going up and down and up and down. It's crazy.
exactly, exactly. And, I will tell you one thing that I really want folks to learn is that when you test yourself with a glucose meter, sometimes it might tell you you're not hypoglycemic, but how you feel you're hypoglycemic.
Hmm.
And people don't understand that their meters are inaccurate. And if they test their meter at the same time they have a fasting blood glucose draw, and compare those results every single time, you'll see where your meter is. Does it run high normally? Does it run low? So some people think they're doing great, but their meter can run 15 or 20 points low. Maybe that changes that perspective. In my case, mine ran 10 points high. So once I learned that, my first red flag was, well, what's causing me to dip low? It's the insulin. So I knew I had to get rid of that. So
Yeah.
that's what I worked on. And unfortunately, nobody really wanted to help me. They basically said I was going to be stuck with this the rest of my life and it would get worse and the dosages for medicine and insulin increase. And I'm kind of stubborn. Anybody who knows me would probably know that. But I think that served the purpose at the time. And I just dug deep and I tested everything. I tested my glucose 6 to 10 times a day, and that was before we had the Freestyle Libre.
Wow.
So I was constantly poking my fingers, but it gave me such great insight. And then, people do that today. They'll test their glucose, but they don't always do anything with the info. I tracked it down to the nth degree. I knew exactly what affected me and when it affected me. And that's how I was able to make some dramatic changes. And seriously, I was able to eliminate all of my meds and all of my insulin. I don't have that roller coaster ride anymore since I've done that. I've been put on a very good path and I follow it to a T because I just feel so much better now. And I know I'm actually healthier because of it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. There is so much misinformation out there for not only type 2 diabetics, but type 1 diabetics. I mean,
Yes.
I know a naturopath here in Connecticut, and he's a type 1 diabetic. And what they were recommending for him was basically like the standard American diet: eat more carbohydrates. Oh, don't worry that your blood sugar goes up. Just take more insulin. And
Right.
he was like, this is crazy. I mean, why would they be recommending that to me when, it's almost like there's just no, either the mainstream medical world just still doesn't see the impact of nutrition, or they've just been taught, well, this disease and this is how we handle it with this medication, and just you can go off and eat whatever you want, because all we know, our knowledge is medication, and that's what we're going to teach you to do. And
Yes.
that, like you said, that's just crazy, because I mean, to me, that can completely uh, determine someone's lifespan, especially with diabetes, because you can't just keep
Absolutely.
getting shots of insulin.
No,
So,
no. I have a 74-year-old woman that I worked with not long ago. She was on 240 units of insulin every day. And her
wow.
doctors kept yelling at her to lose weight. Well, you can't lose weight with that much insulin. And we got her down to about 60 units a day when we got done with coaching. And she lost weight that she couldn't lose in years. We got her with her walker and her oxygen tank to
Yeah.
walk around her block and get that exercise. And just to see her facial expression of how much better she started feeling at her age was just amazing. And it literally touched my heart. But at any age, I think people need to know you could literally turn this disease around.
Oh, absolutely. And it's important that you said you can't lose weight with that much insulin, because I think what people don't understand is that insulin is a fat storage hormone. So when
Yes.
it's in your body, it's telling your body to store fat. And that's what it's supposed to do. I mean, that's
Right.
what its primary role is. But when you have a situation like this, when you're using it to manage a disease, now your body doesn't know exactly that it's not supposed to store that much fat anymore. It's still going to continue to do that. So
Exactly.
that is not something that most people understand, and yet it's what you need to losing the weight is what you need to do to make your body more metabolically responsive, so
Yeah,
you don't need so much insulin.
exactly. So this is our opportunity to share that information today so people can grasp that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that leads me to your title is a diabetes reversal coach, so let's talk a little bit about that. What does that mean for you and for people who work with you?
Well, I wanted to put that title out there for a very specific reason, and it is because diabetics are taught how to manage diabetes. And it is adding more medicine, more insulin, eat what you want because I know you're going to do it anyway, so we'll just throw more at you. And managing something means you're just kind of going along and we're not really looking to improve. So I wanted to make sure people understood this is something that we can reverse the effects of. I don't call anything a cure, but we definitely can reverse the effects of what this disease does to folks with their eyes, their kidneys, their heart. We ruin our pancreas with this disease. And that is that organ that allows us to produce our own insulin. And I don't think people attach that. So I don't want people to manage. I want them to take the steps to reverse and improve.
That's fantastic, because I bet you 99% of people listening to this, or, just reading about diabetes or whatever, don't know that it's reversible.
You're absolutely right. They really think they're stuck. And especially our older population, they very many times feel like they're just too old and it doesn't matter anymore. But I've worked with people up until their early 80s, and the dramatic change that you can see at any age is just amazes me what people are doing every day when they have the right information.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk about the different types of diabetes. I, I believe predominantly you work with type 2 diabetics. Do you do any work with type 1? And if you just want to explain, the difference between the two for people listening.
Sure. Most of my, probably 99% of my clientele is type 2 or even type 1.5. But to start at the beginning, type 1 really is an autoimmune disease, typically starting at a young age. I've had parents and grandparents call me with a child that's 18 months old that's been diagnosed with type 1. And that can typically go into the early adult years. Type 2, we really used to call it adult onset because of lifestyles and especially a sedentary lifestyle. And most folks were typically seeing it in their mid 40s and up. Unfortunately, now we are seeing type 2 at a much earlier age, even in the teen years. And funny enough, I was diagnosed originally with type 1.5 because I did not respond immediately to the medication protocol and my single insulin shot per day. So very quickly, they put me on mealtime shots in addition. But there is a type 1.5 or LADA, which is someone who could carry the antibodies of a type 1 diabetic, that autoimmune piece, but it doesn't really come about until a later age. It could be 50s, 60s, in that age range, we're seeing some of that. And these are folks that are absolutely insulin dependent. What we don't see enough research on is if we knew about this at a younger age, could we do something to help mitigate some of those side effects before they actually get diagnosed? And getting diagnosed with LADA, people can dramatically lose a lot of weight, they have no energy, pretty much their pancreas is not functioning. So I'd love to see more research in that area for folks, but those are folks that typically will have to stay on insulin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my father was actually a type 1 diabetic. He was diagnosed when he was 13, I believe, and that would have been in 1941 or so.
Oh my,
And
okay, so
yeah,
that
I
was a
know,
while ago.
a long time ago, he's passed away, but they told him then that he probably wouldn't live past age 50,
Mm.
but he chose to, I don't know how he knew this, because obviously the education and information wasn't there, but
So,
he just created his own diet. And I swear I never saw that man touch dessert ever.
wow,
I mean, it was all, he probably still had, my family probably still had, like pasta or bread or something like that a little bit more
okay.
often than he should have, but he was pretty clean and he lived to be 67.
Oh, see,
So 17
that's
years past.
amazing.
And back then, I mean, it was bolus of insulin shots. I mean, it wasn't,
Yes,
they didn't have the pump and it couldn't be regulated. So it was just, like a blast of insulin, which is terrible. So
exactly.
that just goes to show you how much of an impact diet can have.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I'll tell you, my father was 61 when he passed away. He was type 2 diabetic, obese, and back and forth on insulin, medication, back and forth. You know, he didn't do a good job taking care of himself. So, you know, he should be here today.
Mm,
But at the age of 61, that the body said, I just can't do it anymore. So we really don't realize, I think, what diabetes takes away from us.
right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. So let's talk about, we're talking a little about food. One of the questions I want to ask you is what are the ways that diabetes can be managed? And I'll combine this. Is food the only issue?
It is, I think, a very big issue, especially in today's society. But no, it's not the only issue. Food, sleep, you know, obviously, if we're getting some exercise, but even depression is a big thing that affects a lot of diabetics. And adrenal fatigue, you know, we get overstressed and our body can just not can't balance all the hormones. And I do find folks that they may have a good meal. In fact, one of my clients, he'd have a real good lunch that was low glycemic, and an hour and a half or 2 hours later, he's over 200 for his glucose. And as we dove into that a little bit more, it was adrenal fatigue. It was the same, almost the same time every day for him. We were able to pinpoint that and then work on that piece and see those glucose levels start to come down again. So people will take that not knowing it and just think that we have to give more medicine, or the physician may feel like the patient isn't doing everything that they can do and they're not being compliant, when really the patient doesn't know that there are other health issues and things going on that impact their glucose level. So stress is definitely a huge one, and adrenal fatigue fits right in there for many, many folks.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it is so interrelated. It's interesting that you mentioned depression. That like that I wouldn't have thought of that as a side effect, quote unquote. And but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, essentially, you know, you're dealing with different chemicals and neurotransmitters and things like that in the body that I'm sure are affected by either a lot of insulin or a lot of sugar or too little
Right.
of either. What else would you say, you know, is the cause of that?
I think it is that imbalance, you know, as our brains, you know, we need some cholesterol, we need some sugar, we need some insulin. And in my estimation, I believe that everything is just off kilter,
Mm,
and our body just can't respond appropriately. And then when we give ourselves insulin shots, in many, many cases, we're overdoing it. So we're not doing what our body should naturally do. To me, I think of it like a symphony. A non diabetic, things are going on internally we don't even realize, but it's working beautifully. The minute it stops working, now we move to a manual process. We cannot actually replicate as well in a manual process as what our bodies could do, because I don't know how much insulin my brain really does need or how much sugar, right? But
right.
internally our body does. So we compensate, or we think we're doing the right thing, or we think we're covering up and we're okay. But usually we don't need a lot of insulin and we really don't need a lot of sugar. And we teach people to count carbs because we think that's the right way to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're finding out is that protocol is definitely not working. So I think there's a lot more research I think we should be looking at in that area. And I think we could probably crack that nut a little bit better than we are today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, diet is the biggest issue in what people are eating. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, you know, want to, whether they want it or this is what they've been told to do, they just want the pill. You know,
Yeah,
like I don't want to change my diet. You know,
right.
I'll just take more insulin or I'll just take this pill or whatever. And I feel like um, the misconception is that they're not going to like what they're eating. So I'm just,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I'm curious how, when you work with someone, how that probably comes up as a challenge. I think that people are like, oh, I'm going to hate this diet. I want these kinds of foods, blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you get over that and get people to adjust?
So one of the first things that I've learned very early on is we have to listen to the patient. They have so much to tell us and nobody really asks their opinion of anything.
Right. That's true.
So yeah, and if I know somebody really has more difficulty with foods, so I'll pace everyone a little bit differently. But one of the things I'm going to ask, tell me the foods you like. What are the flavors that you're drawn to? Because we want to try to replicate those flavors so people can feel like they're still enjoying food and not having to give everything up. And I have an arsenal of recipes that I do share with my clients. So everything from appetizers, main entrees, side dishes, and desserts. So we cover the gambit of what somebody might want. And if we can replicate some of that, then their need for the food that is not going to help them is not so great. And we bring that so it's part of your regular lifestyle. And that seems to work beautifully. I think patients are tired of being told what to eat by so many people
Hmm.
that and I can even speak from my own experience of you start to resent it. When I first got diagnosed, I I was sent about 15 different new diabetes cookbooks from friends and family because they wanted to help. And that's very endearing and I love them all for it. But when I looked through the cookbooks, those truly were not good, healthy meals for somebody that's diabetic. So that's what started me on the path to start creating some recipes that I could keep the flavor. In fact, I have a recent one. And if somebody, I'll say at the end of the set here, but if you go to my website, I have some recipes out there. I just made one that is like potato salad. I missed my mom's old fashioned potato salad when we had those summer barbecues in Chicago. So I was able to replicate that with cauliflower. And it's like 98% there. I mean,
There.
the
Yeah.
flavor is there. Yes.
Yeah.
So, so those are the things, if they're easy to make and we love the taste, there's no reason to go backwards.
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said you ask people about what flavors they like. And the reason I say that is because uh, when I was traveling cross country, I went to this restaurant in Missoula, Montana, of all places, called the Silk Road. And the chef there had an Ayurvedic perspective. And he wasn't Indian or anything. He just loved Ayurvedic medicine. And if any of you don't know what that is, I would encourage you to Google it. It's
Mhm.
spelled Ayurveda, Ayurveda. And it's the principle or the philosophy of Ayurvedic medicine is basically that you, from a nutrition standpoint, you satisfy all of the different tastes and flavors. So sweet, spicy, salty, tangy. And so he created every dish on his menu satisfies 5 of those different flavors. So the philosophy
Wow.
was when you have this meal, you won't feel wanting anything else. Like, how so many
Right.
people say, oh, I have to have dessert. Like
Right.
no matter what they're having for dinner or sometimes lunch, I have to have
Exactly.
dessert because they're not
Exactly.
satisfying something in the meal that gets that sweet flavor for them.
Correct.
And
That's
so if
absolutely correct.
yeah, so if you look at it from a perspective like that, okay, how do I make my dish, my dinner, whatever it is, that satisfies what I love? For some people, it might be salty. It might be the chips that people can't give up. So how do I
Right.
satisfy that within the meal? And you'll find that you don't have those cravings anymore.
No, exactly. Exactly. It's a very simple way to be able to start, and we don't have to feel like people have to give up everything they love. And that's why people are not seeking help because they think they have to eliminate everything.
Exactly. Yep. Like you can make chocolate mousse in a way that basically has no sugar in it. And no one would even believe that, but the
Nope.
recipes are out there. Yeah.
They
And
are. I have one for chocolate pudding, and my base is avocado. It
yeah,
makes it creamy. But if you don't like avocado, I won't tell you because you can't tell.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's just people have to kind of give a little bit as far as stretching their palate, or, tasting something, that they wouldn't normally like, or whether it's a vegetable or the way that you prepare something,
Exactly.
just be a little flexible, and you'll find out that you probably like a lot more things than you thought you did.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. There's a ton of
Yeah.
stuff out there to choose from.
Oh my gosh, yeah, definitely, definitely. So, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think it's important to just review it again. How do you define the difference between managing and reversing diabetes?
So managing really is you're following your medication protocol. For folks who've gone to those diabetes classes, you're basically following what you've done there. So you're following somebody else's idea of what you should be doing. When we talk about reversing, the key is to understand the foods that benefit you in, as we mentioned, taste, but are going to give you your energy back. They're going to help you feel full and not wanting something else. Reversing is going to be, let's reduce the medication and insulin. And for some folks, the answer might be we can only get you down to one medication. And maybe that's what works for you based on your health at that particular time. Other folks, we've eliminated multiple medications, and finally we get to see a normal A1C range, where we cannot see that when you're on 2 and 3 medications and insulin. You'll never get down to below 5.7 A1C when you're on multiple meds. So we learn to get you off. We learn through that process that we're not going to make all of your organs work so hard, because those medications are either going to work on your pancreas to overproduce insulin. It could affect your heart. It could work on your kidneys. It will work on your liver. And we have medications that work on multiple organs at one time. So over time, we can burn out those cells in our pancreas. So if we take the steps to change what you eat, look at your activity and your lifestyle. If you're not an active person, and I have many that don't want to go to the gym, then we find ways to change up someone's day where we can get them off the chair, off the couch as part of their regular day without thinking of it as exercise, but we're getting movement. We want to make sure that we work on improving sleep. So it's all of the things. We kind of take that pie and slice it and dice it, and we put all those pieces together. And you are going to make some changes, but when someone gets their energy back, they feel much better. Most of the time, people don't feel better on multiple medications. So then you're only managing, but when you see and feel the difference by stepping into the lifestyle changes little by little, every person I've ever spoken to says they sleep better, they wake up without having that mental fog anymore. Now, when we're getting that, we're losing weight that we're not even trying to lose, it's just coming off on its own. That's when we know we are reversing the effects of diabetes.
Yeah. I think another important thing, and it's probably important for me because my background is exercise physiology, and my dissertation was all about strength training and the importance of strength training on glucose and
Yes.
insulin metabolism. So I learned how important it is to maintain muscle. I think
Yes.
one of the biggest issues, potentially, as to why people go down the path of type 2 diabetes is that they start losing muscle.
Right.
And if you don't maintain that, whether you have, an active lifestyle, or you have a labor intensive job, or you go to the gym and you lift weights, it just makes it harder and harder for the body to regulate the glucose and insulin. So I think helping people understand how important it is to maintain muscle, that usually helps them um, ease into an exercise routine easier, I guess.
Exactly. Well, it's exactly it. And I'll tell you, a lot of my clients, especially for the ones that really don't take time to go to a gym, um, usually I suggest go to Walmart or something if you have to. Get those 5 and 10 pound
Sure.
free weights.
Yep.
And I can always tell my clients, because if you see those weights sitting next to their couch,
Yep.
they went and they did that. And even if it's you're sitting in the couch or the chair and you're just going to start with your arms a little bit, watch TV. Eventually, they start realizing the benefit of doing that, and then they do tend to increase over time. So I agree. I think it's very important for that resistance and that weight training to accelerate what's happening in reversing this disease.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, so we've talked a little bit about just how traditional medicine treats type 2 diabetes. How do you help your patients work with their physician? Because I would imagine that there might be some challenges there, especially if they have a physician that's just, medication focused and not really, interested in helping them with the nutrition, or doesn't know enough about it to make those recommendations. So I feel like you are almost like a patient advocate in that sense.
Actually, yes, and that's been an interesting piece in the coaching. I always leave it open for my clients that if they wanted their physician to contact me or vice versa, that's part of what I offer, because the communication has to be clear. I do have a number of physicians that will send me their patients because they can't get them to comply. But it is a little difficult with a physician's schedule sometimes to get as much time as we can with them. So what we normally do is we prep. We talk about the different lab tests that would be useful to my client, so they understand long term how to determine how well they're truly doing over time. So it could be on the pancreas, it could be, which is a C-peptide test. I always like them to get that as a baseline. And that tells us how your pancreas is really functioning with or without medication, and let them understand that. And then we set up what their next appointment should sound like. Walk in with a list of questions or discussion points. And we don't have to overwhelm the doctor, but learning to ask the doctor to explain certain things opens up the dialogue that they've previously not had. And I've had more people come back to me and say, oh my gosh, I've never had my doctor sit down and actually write on a whiteboard and explain to me until I asked them what you told me to ask. Or I've had some folks come back and say, it's clear to me now I need to change physicians,
Yeah.
because we couldn't get that dialogue going. So I've had both camps actually. And doctors, some of them are receptive to know that there's somebody in the wings waiting to help them. And I just have to ensure them I'm not going to tell a patient that I'm going to suggest they change their medication. I always send them back to their physician to have that dialogue. So we don't want to have any of that miscommunication. But what I'm finding is physicians are realizing that I'm out there to help support both sides. So I kind of like to say where their reach ends, mine begins, and we build that health team for each diabetes patient.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Awesome. So you have a book,
I
and I'm
do.
sure it's a wealth of knowledge of everything that you've learned. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I actually wrote the Virgin Diabetic more as an inspiration to tell folks that if I can do this, and at the time I didn't know very much about diabetes, that anyone can do this. And we do talk about some lab testing, some of the things that I went through, the pitfalls of insulin, how I learned along the way to make some changes. And I have to say, some of the best feedback I had received from multiple people was, I felt like you were speaking to me, that you really understood what I'm going through. And that, I think, speaks louder than anything else. So it gives people that impetus that, oh, I can have a lab test that nobody told me about. Oh, if she's struggling, it's not always easy. I'm not alone. And it's a quick read. It doesn't take very long. It's a very easy read, but I think it's one that speaks from the heart and really just opens up the diabetes patient to take the next step. And that's what I was driving for on that book.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely. I think it's what a lot of people need, just to hear that somebody else has done it, and
Yes,
that it can be done for sure, and just even to open their eyes on a lot of things that we've been talking about today, that they don't they were either misinformed, or they just didn't understand, or they didn't even ask the right questions. So
exactly.
that's great. So tell us a little bit about how your coaching program works. What can someone expect when they're working with you?
So normally I have folks that work with me a minimum of 8 weeks. So there's 8, 12, 16 weeks, and a few other programs depending on their needs. But it is a time intensive program. It Part of the process is for me to really understand and get to know my client. And is what really gives me the ability to individualize and customize coaching based on what that person really needs. So we don't want to all be treated the same as a diabetic because we're very individual. We have different lifestyles. It's usually weekly coaching. And if somebody needs more time with me, all they need to do is say, yes, I need extra time, and they absolutely get it. Coaching normally is in the home. And if for folks that are not here in South Naples, then it's always video coaching or over the phone. But with the COVID-19, everybody has pretty much moved to video coaching and phone
Right.
for now. But we'll get back there. And then we'll also do some fun things. We're going to go to the grocery store. So even for my folks who said they know how to grocery shop, we always learn one or two things that we probably didn't think about. We go to restaurants, and most folks do like to dine out and they don't want to give it up. So we go and learn what are those little things that you could read what's on a menu, but what are the things that are not displayed on the menu that could sabotage your effort? So we get to be out and about. It's very non-traditional coaching, and I think maybe that's why it tends to work so well. We don't have that clinical feeling of, about it. And we have fun along the way, which I think is the most important thing, that you don't feel like this is so hard to do. We really do have some fun along the way. And getting to know each other is really a huge aspect that I think we're missing in the medical community. We really don't know and understand our patients as individuals. And I really wanted to change that process and make it very personalized. So that's on the private coaching. We can do group coaching as well. And recently, I was able to launch my online coaching program. So it's a monthly membership. I don't want cost to be a barrier for anyone to learn about diabetes. So if private coaching does not fit into someone's life, you can start for $69 a month. It's a 1-year program, and I take all of my coaching techniques and put them into weekly lessons. And if you still want the opportunity for one-on-one coaching, the opportunity is always made available. So they're fun. You get recipes, you get all the great insight, and I still get to hold your hand through that process, just in a little different format.
Yeah.
And that program is called My Diabetes Concierge. So, so far, great reviews. People love the videos, and I just kind of try to be real.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, you've got a lot of different options for people based on, what their needs are, what they want, whether they might be located in Southwest Florida, or if they're not, there's, options for that. I love the restaurant idea, because that information is huge. People have no idea, like, when they go out to a restaurant, everything from what kind of oil are they using in the kitchens. I mean,
Right.
they could be using vegetable oils, which are terrible for us. I mean, you think you go to a really nice fancy restaurant and you have no idea like what they might
No,
be using in there, and what kinds of how do they put their meals together, and what kind are they using, organic or local ingredients, that kind of thing. So I think
exactly.
that's it can be overwhelming to try to go to a restaurant and navigate around what can I have that's going to be okay, that's not going to completely throw my blood sugar and insulin off the chart. So I think that's a great feature.
It is good. And I will share one thing that I learned through that process. Usually we try to be very private about what we're doing, but more times than not, when I'm at a restaurant with a client, they will tell the hostess, the wait staff, this is my diabetes coach. We're going to learn what I can eat in your restaurant. And they're actually very proud of that. And I was trying to be very discreet, but they're very open about it.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. Awesome. So, this has been great. A lot of information for everybody. And I'm sure that people are going to want to reach out to you and learn more. So, how do you want people to be able to get a hold of you or get more information from you?
So the website at reversemydiabetes.net, they can go and book a free consultation right on the website. There's information there. I have downloadable information, and they can certainly email me at Denise at reversemydiabetes.net. And those are two great ways to be able to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And they can get your book on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. The Virgin Diabetic. Perfect. So thank you so much for being with us today, Denise. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And
I enjoyed it.
yep. So we'll have this video podcast up on our website, essentialnaples.com, and also emailed out to everyone as well. And hopefully people will connect with you too. And thanks so much for watching, and hope everybody has a great day.